For the first hour, at least anyway, the programme will be devoted to discussing the referendum to be held in January on the single topic of whether or not to have an elected mayor in Salford. For the change, I have the organiser of the petition that sparked the referendum, Geoffery Berg, and for the status quo, I have the leader of the Lib Dems in Salford, Councillor Norman Owen. Good morning, gentlemen. Right, first of all, the rules of engagement. 4 minutes for each gentleman to put his case, followed by a 2-minute reply. We'll then have a break and then go into all the queries and questions that have already been sent in to us by members of the public. And please, if you want to send in more in, we'll be delighted to get them. Right, first off is Geoffery. Right, go ahead.
Replacing the council leader and ceremonial mayor with a directly elected mayor is a change to the system of local government made possible by the last Labour government and being built on by the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition government. Though it is not a magic potion, a directly elected mayor would transfer power from small political groups to the people at large. It would make the person running the council answerable not primarily to the small group of councillors of his party, who would no longer hypothetically be able to remove him, but to the people as a whole. The people as a whole would be the final arbiter of who runs the council. Indeed, the probability is even within the Salford Labour Party, councillors would no longer keep the power to decide who is their nominee to run Salford Council. That would fall to the wider membership of their party. No wonder it is unpopular with Salford's Labour councillors. Indeed, as happens sometimes in America, or even originally in London, when Ken Livingstone won as an independent, a mayor or prospective mayor can appeal over the heads of his party direct to the electors. This is indeed people power. This is not just merely theoretical. A directly elected mayor, unlike a council leader, could not rely on the electors of 1 out of 20 wards to maintain his political base, and so concentrate a disproportionate amount of council spending on them. He would have to appeal to people in all or most of the 20 wards in Salford, which is much fairer and far more democratic. I turn to a critical issue, Salford's high council tax, which council leaders in Salford have got away with for very many years, because under the present system they effectively just have to get it through their own councillors, not the people at large. However, it is very unlikely any directly elected mayor could keep winning borough-wide elections in Salford while the council tax was year after year continually higher than in all the 6 neighbouring councils. This on its own would tend to lead to, at least in comparative terms, lower council tax and substantial savings for Salford people. And with an elected mayor, unlike in the present system, there's a reasonable chance of, say, the Conservatives being elected on a proposal to reduce the council tax somewhat, or of the Mayoral Alliance, who wish to appeal direct to the people, getting a mayor elected who would reduce per-person expenditure levels to roughly that of Trafford, and in the process halve, or more than halve, Salford's council tax. Entering the league of some London councils, such as Wandsworth and Westminster councils, instead of forever forcing most Salford households to pay over twice as much council tax that most people there in those boroughs pay. Such is the kind of change that a directly elected mayor can lead to.
Thank you, Geoffery. Right, Norman. Your 4 minutes.
Good morning, listeners. Just to dismantle this proposal piece by piece, I think Mr. Berg has got to understand, regarding calling for a referendum regarding single mayor status to run this city, he needs to do a little, well, not just a little homework, but a lot more homework on how Salford is structured as a metropolitan city and as it fits within the remits of the 10 other boroughs. The problem that with Mr. Berg's proposal is that we've already had a vote in this city on, and in the council, on a strong leadership model. Now, we can't just be swapping horses in midstream, as I've said to a lot of people. And these veiled promises of halving the council tax and having a single leader as a mayor, making the decisions with his own cabinet, does not bode well, because we've already got proof of other authorities. Derby, Stoke have not been really pleased with the mayoral situation they've got there. Mr. Berg has gone out to collect the names that are necessary for the referendum. But I would advise people to look at the way this city has been rebuilt over the years, where we're going with it. It is impossible. And if the golden bullet for reducing the council tax by half had been found, I'm sure the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives would have jumped on it years ago. It proved from last night's public face down with the Mayor Alliance that they were left adrift at the end. They were clueless with their arguments. They could not produce sound figures regarding how they would reduce the council tax by half. And one of the main planks of Mr. Berg's argument is to not do any regeneration. Well, I'm sorry. That is an absolute nonsense, because if you look at the regeneration that's gone out in the city, from Langworthy down to Lower Broughton to Everwell Riverside, and further adrift into Whatzel, this regeneration is necessary. To take this amount of fund, well, it's illegal to do that anyway. But what Mr. Berg is not understanding, that we have budgets within the regeneration budget supporting people. Now, is he going to take £10 million worth out of that? That's the big question. And really has to understand the fundamental basics of how this Salford works. Not any other council within the 10 authorities, but Salford as per se, as a single city. I found last night's debate lacklustre, no evidence coming forward, and I think the audience were displeased at the end that they had not got the answers that they were requiring.
Right, thank you, Norman. 2 minutes now, Jeff, to your refutation.
Well, that there was a vote in council to have a strong leadership model, as every other council in the country voted, is what I'm objecting to. Such a vote should have been put to the people, and is being put to the people in Manchester and Liverpool this year, midstream, as you say, but it's being put to the people. I don't entirely trust the council to reflect the views of the people. We had that on the congestion charge. The Salford Council wanted a congestion charge to come into the area. 84% of Salford people, when they got the chance, voted against it and voted it down. You can talk about some councils seeming to fail with an elected mayor, but some have clearly succeeded. Middlesbrough, London, to name but two, where it has been a good change. It all depends on the people. And no system can be better than the people running it, although some systems systemically give it a better chance. Now, as for cuts, well, 38 million or so pounds was cut in spending this last year. If it had been cut the year before, it would have led to a third cut in council tax. So these things are possible, and there are very few people regretting that the 38 million pounds is not being spent. As for the regeneration argument, I just disagree fundamentally. A lot of regeneration has been demolishing homes and communities, putting flats in their place. Well, it's uprooting people unfairly. They don't want their homes demolished. Usually the problem is not the housing, but some hooligans in the neighbourhood. And the answer really should have been to deal with the hooligans and not demolish the houses everybody, including their neighbours, lived in.
Thank you, Geoffery. Norman.
Yeah, I think Mr. Berg is well adrift of the argument on regeneration. I've got figures here. We spent, and are spending in Langworthy, in Seal and Langworthy, 1.9 million to actually demolish houses, and actually 158 houses benefited through that monies. What I'm saying to you, is, Mr. Berg, is that this is all really little small amounts of beer that you're trying to pick off, because the simple reason is there is no solid figures. All you're doing is looking at other models that are not working. And I have to say also that you've not convinced me by saying that houses don't need knocking down and regeneration taking place. We are now moving within this city on a PFI bid to build a massive amount of houses, refurbish an area. In your book, that would not take place. But I have to say to you, you don't come from Salford, you come from Prestwich, you haven't got the overall view of how the city runs, and I've made it quite clear to you and your Mayoral Alliance, you are not up to speed is what is required for this city. You've gone out on a limb to really challenge. I think this is a personal vendetta against the Labour Party and Mr. Merry, and I won't go into the personal reasons over that, but I think you're exercising trying to, and along with your partners, the English Democrats and the Community Action Party, is really trying to sabotage the very democracy of this city.
Right, thank you, Councillor. That's the two gentlemen put their positions. Now then, if anyone listening wants to make a comment or ask a question, please contact us. Now, I've got some more in already, which we'll go into in a few minutes, but if you want to not have your saving force, I can't bring anyone in live today, but if you want to make your point, give it a ring, 0161 793 2944, 793 2944, or better still, email studio@salfordcityradio.org, studio@salfordcityradio.org, or text SCR followed by a message to 60777. That's 60777. I'm going to play a little bit of music for both Councillor Owen and Mr. Berg to get the breath back. All right, we've got Councillor Owen and Mr. Berg with us this morning, answering questions about the mayoral, possible mayoral election. And first questions come in from Arthur in Worsley, and he said, if you are successful, I presume this is Mr. Berg, if you are successful in your campaign, and for example, John Merry was elected as the mayor, what would be the difference between that and the current political setup? There would be no point, would there?
I don't agree with that. I think even in John Merry, he would have to look to the fact that he's going to be, if he's going to be re-elected again, need the votes of people in all 20 wards and all areas of the council, and not just his Broughton ward. So he'd think twice about spending disproportionate amounts of money on Broughton wards, such as the Broughton hub, costing millions of pounds, was opened a few months ago, where other areas of the city are getting nothing or next to nothing. I think he wouldn't and have the council tax year after year after year higher than all 6 neighbouring councils if he knew that was going to be an issue at the next mayoral election, and people would stand against him proposing to stop that poor run of having a higher council tax than all the neighbouring councils. He would then start doing something about it.
I think possibly on this, Arthur's point probably is that the Labour Party bloc is the biggest bloc on, whichever way you look at it in Salford.
I mean, I agree that it is the position now, but we found even in strong in one-party area, such as the strongest Democrat area in the United States is Massachusetts, yet the main candidate for the Republican nomination managed to get the governorship of Massachusetts. I think if there's a one-to-one election, people consider the alternatives more seriously and are more likely to elect somebody not from the dominant party, at least sometimes.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Right. Yes.
Well, you can just appreciate the nonsense that's just been spoken. In one voice, Mr. Berg is saying that, we developed the Broughton Hub, which is part of regeneration. And in the next breath, he's saying that where other areas need extra help. Now, you can't have it both ways. You can't take regeneration monies away, which is what you're saying, to reduce council taxes, and not have these people living poor and the poor housing and the quality of life is not good for them. You cannot have them out on a limb without putting them into an area which is of well-being and good health, and that costs money, and that comes from regeneration. So you've just defeated your own argument there. And when it comes to Mr. Merry being elected as the mayor, as you have said yourself, he would probably pick his own cabinet. He would still have the amount of power. In fact, he may have a little bit more power than just being lead of the Labour Council. Because, as we were said last night, if he came to be another Ken Livingstone spending money where he felt that his social conscience needed to put it, he may do that against the wishes of the people. But there again, you have still not proved with that question from Arthur why the difference of the change of Mr. Merry being the mayor would make any difference from being leader of this council.
He would have to be more responsive to the people if he wanted to be re-elected next time.
Okay, right.
Can I just reply to that, Brian?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Do you think for one moment that anybody, even if it was not Councillor Merry, would go into the mayoral leadership and not show due diligence, truthfulness, honesty to deliver for this city? Nobody would go into that job without doing that. And I can assure you now, it would, if Mr. Merry was there, it wouldn't be in the political power base of being leader of the Labour Council, Labour group. He would be there as mayor, and he would have to select his own cabinet. Now, I think, as I've said to you before, I think you need to go away, relook at your formula and readdress how you want to attack this issue of how the mayoral system would work correctly in this city. Look at the financial packages, look at how you want to restructure the budgets. You obviously haven't got a sound-based feeling of how the economy of the city runs. I'm on budget committee. I have a fair understanding of how things run. And just a little point I want to make quite clear to you. We have capital financing in charges, for depreciation. That, at this moment in time, is £10 million. Are you saying that we would renege on paying them debts, them items? I mean, you cannot really come on this show and say, I would do this. Because as far as I can see, up to now, you have not produced anything different from last night.
We wouldn't be incurring extra debt, and we'd be looking in due course to sell some capital items to raise money towards the massive debt which Salford has accumulated, nearly £600 million, without asking the permission or the consent of the people, unbeknown to most people.
Right, okay, can we go on to the next question? This is from Francis in Pendleton, and he said, Francis might be lady, of course. To date, there have been 37 referendums on whether to establish an elected mayor in English local authorities. 12 have been passed and 25 rejected by the voters. The odds don't really seem to be in the favour of an elected mayor, so isn't this a huge waste of ratepayers' money? Councillor Owen.
I actually mentioned this last night. Actually, it's 38. It's 13 and 25. Yes, I mean, the lady is quite correct. We are fundamentally going down a route of spending something around £370,000 to bring this referendum about. I'm sure that is money that could be well spent elsewhere. And at this moment in time, we are under the cosh, and these are these are bills that we cannot afford to pay, and it's putting extra pressure on the finance. And I have to say, to the lady who's just made this point, well done, because you're quite correct, and it does show you the difference in the balance of those who want a mayor and those who don't, and you're quite correct. Well done.
Right, Mr. Berg. Any comment on that?
Yes, I have. The 2 points, it's first of all to say, well, democracy costs money. It's a waste of money. We know full well what the results will be in, say, 15 or 16 of the 20 wards of the city at local elections. That doesn't stop Councillor Owen putting up Liberal Democrat candidates in wards that he's not going to win, and it doesn't stop the elections from taking place, rather than a gentleman's agreement to save money on the council of not contesting the wards where there is only likely to be one winner in any given year. As for the volume of the cost, the £200,000, and that's about £2 per household, that's roughly 1% of the difference households pay between living in Salford, where the council tax is higher, and living in Trafford, where the council tax is lower. If we could get it even part way towards the Trafford council tax, let alone much lower as we propose, it would be money well spent by the Salford people.
Just a quick point I've got on this. I've heard you just now, Geoffery said 200,000, Norman said 250,000. I've heard all sorts of figures.
250. Councillor Mary announced that last night.
250,000.
250.
Right, we're all agreed on that. I'm sorry, I've just seen different figures everywhere, and I wasn't sure. Exactly.
Well, on her question was, I'm suspicious of the figures because they put in officer time anyhow. But we'll ignore that and say that 200,000 for a referendum that would be lost, because the first stage is supposed to be 200,000 if you believe the officer figures, rather than the extra cost to the council of things like the postage cost and the real extra cost of holding the referendum.
And also, isn't the thought, I noticed that Manchester and Liverpool are both being told they will hold one, so they're going to have to spend it without getting signatures in. Yes, Councillor Owen, you had something.
Can I just come back to, Mr. Berg, this is not the first time you've raised a referendum. You raised a referendum in Berg.
That was on the congestion charging issue, and that's what forced the referendum on the congestion charge, where Salford Council wanted a congestion charge, and it's only because we forced the referendum that the 84% of people in Salford who didn't want it had the chance to vote.
Correct. That's democracy.
Okay.
Can I just say, coming back to the point that you made about you don't live in Salford, yet you've taken this petition out. It's incurring costs on Salford. You don't live in the borough. You may have a business here. Why do you feel that you've got to target Salford on this very issue of a mayoral referendum? Why have you chosen Salford?
For a start, Salford's got a higher council tax than any of the 6 neighbouring councils. When you say, I don't live in Salford, that's true. But the 10,000 plus people who signed the petition, the 9,062 valid signatures all live in Salford. It's the Salford people that have created this, that want it. If I went round door to door and practically nobody signed, then we wouldn't have a referendum. It's because when I went round, most people were only too happy to sign and to have the same rights as Manchester and Liverpool are getting.
So did you tell these people when you was asking for the signatures that you could reduce the council tax by 50%?
We
Just
did
answer the question.
I didn't say by 50%. We did say that it is something which we would campaign on, put a candidate up on, and most people agreed with that.
So why have
although the main issue we pushed first of all was that Manchester is getting a referendum. Why isn't Salford? In my view, all boroughs should have this choice.
irrespective of you calling for this referendum,
I
think it's inaccurate. I think it's untruthful to be knocking on doors, proposing to promise to people that you can reduce this council tax by either 33%, 50%. Nobody in their right mind would go round this city campaigning for those amounts of reductions when it is completely and utterly impossible to deliver it. So that's one point. I think personally, and looking at last night's meeting, I'm fully convinced that the electorate in this city, although we have a lot of apathy, and you've made a point about, we put councillors up. I'll make a quick point too. It took me 11 years to get elected onto this council. That's going every year and being defeated. But that's my choice. Now, I would have liked to see you and your Mayoral alliance be honest with the people of this city by, one, campaigning on a solid base of what is a real provisional figure for council tax, to have done your homework on the economics of the city, which is soundly and obviously visible that you have not and haven't got a clue. And the other issue is that you may have achieved these signatures, but I am of the view that some of these were duped into signing on spurious points of view from yourself. And that's my point to the electorate out in the city of Salford.
Can I
be
just
guarded.
Another question in here.
Can I answer that?
This is relevant. It's more or less on the same line thing. This is Tony Metals, who said that there have been campaigns in 4 of the 12 local, well, I believe it's 13 now, 4 of the 12 local authorities with directly elected mayors, that's Doncaster, Hartlepool, Lewisham and Torbay, to hold referendums to abolish the posts. Do you understand why this is occurring, and how would you ensure it does not happen in Salford, given that the money will have to be spent to run the referendum, and if you're successful, the costs required to set up the office of mayor?
Well, what is tending to happen is that Labour are quite happy, say in Doncaster, when there's a Labour mayor, they don't campaign to stop it. When somebody else gets in, they suddenly get upset, and then they start trying to collect signatures to change the system. They're just bad losers. But if I can go back to the important point about council tax, our proposals to cut council tax by 50%, which would entail a 15% reduction in spending, are realistic and achievable. I mean, just to take one example, the net spending on young people, apart from the school's budget, outside the school's budget, which has to go to the schools, in Salford, is £61 million. In Trafford, it is £28 million. Trafford's 96% of the population of Salford. I can take another example. It's the arts and leisure and culture budget in Salford is over 9 million, and Trafford is 2.5 million. You can go on and on, where Salford is spending vastly more than other councils, and that can be curtailed.
I have to laugh, Mr. Berg. Believe me, if Salford had the wealth of Trafford, I could understand it. But you have just absolutely come up with some absolute nonsense. You look at the quality of life of people in this city. We've got Broughton, Langworthy, we've got pools there, we've got youth clubs in this city. We are struggling to maintain these services. And you are coming on this show and wanting to determine to cut these budgets. I have to say to you, before you can make these comments and make these this analysis, go around this city, look at the 20 wards that you're talking about, look at the wealth and look at the poverty in all of them, right? It's obvious that you're just plucking these figures out of thin air.
The budget book.
It's the budget book, but you cannot look, if that's the case, then you want to put 2.5 million into services rather than 9 million. That would decimate young people's lives. We've had to pull issues and projects in the last few months because of short of funding. And you want to even cut that further. Can I come back to the gentleman, Tony, who actually put the question in? You're quite right. If these people in these 4 citizenships or mayoral authorities have seen the light, that's the very reason we're here today, for me to argue the very point against the mayoral run city.
But you're on the budget committee. You should know full well there's a formula grant by which all the resources and spending of local councils are supposedly equalised between areas to take account of the richer boroughs and the poorer boroughs. That said, it is the fact that many parts of Trafford, Old Trafford to an extent Trafford and Partington, are every bit as deprived as most parts of Salford. As Trafford Council leader has said in a public meeting, one of the wards is in the poorest 1% of wards. Yet their regeneration budget's under 1 million. People are not deprived in Trafford because of the council services going down. Yes, you're right, we want to further reduce its council spending and the bureaucracy that it entails in Salford. And when the council spending was reduced by nearly 40 million this last year, few people notice. What they do notice is their vast council tax bills, which they want reduced.
Can we just take a break there again, gentlemen?
Can I just make a quick point to that one?
We'll come back in a minute and a half, Norman. Just a little break, get your breath back. Right, I'm back again with Councillor Owen and Mr Berg on talking about the mayoral election. Now then, the question's coming from Janice of Swinton. Would you prefer a politically neutral mayor or one aligned to a specific political party? Right, which of you fancies that one?
It's for the people to decide. I am not that particular about whether the mayor is politically neutral or personally aligned to a political party. My strong preference, though, and wish is for a mayor that will substantially reduce council tax. I would say, when Labour talk about a politically neutral ceremonial mayor, the fact is that the last 20 have come from the Labour Party. It's nearly 20 years since they had an opposition mayor, unlike the 6 neighbouring councils, which all in the last few years have had somebody from the opposition. As far as I can see, although Councillor Owen's party for one time was the second largest party on the council, I don't think even since 1974 they've had a Liberal Democrat mayor of Salford.
Well, once again, I think Mr Berg misunderstands what the situation is here. A political neutral mayor would suit a lot of people. Choice would be made. It's a very good question, Janice. That choice would be made by the people. Whoever puts up, if there is a referendum for mayor, it's their choice to put up, and it's for the people of this city to make that choice. But once again, Mr Berg is in default, because Mr Berg is saying in his argument that Mr Merry should not be the mayor regarding leading this city and leading the Labour Party. I know Mr Merry can't wear 2 hats, but I don't think Mr Berg would be very happy if Mr Merry won a mayoral election. We'd be back to where we were. But what I am saying is this: when it comes to being mayor, it goes on the seniority of where you are in the council. Now, there are certain people who've gone that seniority and it's their turn for mayor and have turned it down. I've re-elected in May, will still be on that agenda for mayor, but I will come in my rotation. So Mr Berg is completely wrong with that, understanding where that comes from. And I have to say that if we did get a neutral mayor in this city, for him to start work on the finances and how this city's run is going to be a nightmare. And I'm sure it would take a number of years, a couple of years, to at least get his feet under the table, to know the way that things that work in this city, how the directorates work, and it wouldn't be plain sailing. with a political leader who has been elected as mayor, there would be a foundation there already. But as I say, with being elected myself as mayor, I would have to wait my turn, and Mr. Berger's that's not quite right.
Could I just throw my threepenny in there? That probably the most successful elected mayors in London, where you've had Ken Livingstone followed by Boris Johnson, both of whom were experienced, astute politicians, and they knew what they were doing. They've both been quite successful.
I would say, well, Boris Johnson had been a journalist. He had only been an MP for a short time before becoming mayor, and I don't think he had any local government background himself. So a person of sufficient calibre, even an outsider, can come in and do a very good job as mayor. And if he's got the ability, although Salford will be difficult to sort some of the problems out with, it is possible for such a person to do so. Although I wouldn't be happy with Councillor Mary being elected as mayor, it would then be the choice of all the people of Salford, and that's a lot of what counts.
Right, another question's coming here from Jim of Monton, who said many of the powers and functions in local councils seem to be centralised into Greater Manchester. Boo. How do you think this would affect the role of elected mayor, and that the current government is slashing the resources for local authorities? What real difference can a mayor make if he has no, or she of course, has no money to spend? So you have two questions there really, with functions being centralised into central Manchester, into Greater Manchester, and if resources being slashed, what real difference can a mayor make?
Well, it's up to a good mayor, indeed even a good council leader, which doesn't seem to happen at the moment, is for a person who runs the council is to get the best bang from his buck and to make what money there is go as far as possible. In my view, he should be keeping down the money that he charges to the council taxpayers. I don't agree with the centralisation into AGMA and a succession authority. I don't share the vision of a city region. I think that if anything, people want the decisions taken in their local areas, whether it be Swinton, in Eccles, Earlham or Worsley in the borough, rather than taken in it's by people living in Stockport and Oldham in a city region. So I'm against the city region. I think where there's any merging of buying power, whatever, between the councils should be done on a strictly economic basis and not with a political agenda which is coming in.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I have to say Mr. Berg does really show a hell of a lot of naiveness in the way that things do accrue. The city region is being pushed by the government as well. But I would suggest to Mr. Berg, I would look at the financial and general statistics of 2011 and 2012, and I'd like him, when we go from this meeting, to look at and please make a note of this, the metropolitan districts, the actual expenditure, and you can look at this, and it's in columns 204 to 266, 286. That will give you the provision and breakdown. The reason why we are dividing the services between Salford, Manchester and the city region is on the basis of procurement. We are striving to make savings. This government has just taken £38.4 million from the area-based grant from this city, not just Salford. It's done all over the country. And that 38 million is very, very hard to make up. And that's why, and Mr. Berg has made a point last night about jobs going. Most of the jobs that have gone at the present moment are on voluntary early retirement. This council is working terribly hard not to make any compulsory redundancies. But that area-based grant serviced a hell of a lot of services. It included putting monies into street cleansing, environmental services, regarding new playgrounds, and to draw that back and then try and cut your cloths of suit. And I have to say, as being part of the budget committee, and along with Councillor Hines, it's been difficult, and it is going to continue to be difficult. But I have to say to Mr. Berg, going back to his promise of this 50% council tax, you've not still produced this morning any figures that would give you or correlate to the monies where you would save them. You're giving me hypothetical backgrounds on where you could do. But I have to say to you now, we have one of the finest and sharpest minds on finance in this city, and that's John Spink. He has been doing it for many, many, many years. And I would sooner trust John Spink to run the finances of this city rather than Mr. Berg and his mayoral lines, because I know where I would put my money with to make sure it would be safe. Mr. Berg, please, once and for all this morning, this is about the mayoral referendum and your pursuance of reducing council tax. I think you should admit this morning on the council tax reduction that is a no-go. On the mayoral referendum, I believe, and this is why I faced you down, and after last night's meeting, I'm pleased that I faced you down, because I think your mayoral alliance has proved and shown to be what it's worth. It's just 2 or 3 people with the backup against both the leadership of this city, John Merry, and this Labour Council. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. If this council had been Liberal Democrat-led or Conservative-led, would you have called for this same referendum?
If the council tax was as high, if the bureaucracy was as high, yes, when we went for Berry, it was Conservative-led. So that in itself does not make a difference. It's, as for John Spink being an expert on finance, he does is what the political masters, primarily Councillor Merry, tell him he should. For instance, there is a media centre, a media office in Salford Council, where we get rid of that. There's executive support members costing between the 8 Labour councillors £50,000 a year into their pockets, £6,000 each. Well, most other councils don't have executive support members. We get rid of that. There's plenty of little areas which are in the budget which we would get rid of. Economic development's a bigger one. If they have the city region, which I don't like, why can't they stop competing against each other, each council spending money to stop any new jobs going into other councils, to put them into their own council. Salford spends money to get jobs into Salford instead of Manchester and Trafford. Manchester spends money to get jobs into Salford, to get jobs into Manchester instead of Salford and Trafford. Trafford spends money to get jobs into Trafford instead of Salford and Manchester. It's just an expensive waste of money, and very few jobs are influenced by it anyhow.
Can I just say...
Can you quit over a couple of minutes before the news is due?
Can I just say that you keep shooting yourself in the foot this morning, Mr. Berg, quite seriously. The whole point of economic development in this city is to bring jobs. We've got Media City, we've got the Keys. What we have lost some of the blue chip companies. But it's up to this city's, the management of this city, with its executive officers, its chief exec, to bring development to this city. If we don't do that, we don't bring the jobs, we don't bring the jobs to the young people of this city, we don't get the elderly people back in work. And these are the issues that you've got to understand. And once again, I have to say to you, really, I do not think you understand the fundamental basics. It's all right shouting from the rooftops what you would do, but once again, we've not seen no clear material this morning that would put a solid foundation. I think your arguments are built on a bed of sand, because if you were to mount all your prospective arguments on that bed of sand, it would suddenly sink into oblivion. And really, I'm here to defend both just the people of this city, to make sure the city is prudent in its way it's run, and also on the point of the mayoral referendum, I don't think you're going to be successful. And what I would like you to do at the end of the referendum is please apologise to the people of this city for the nuisance value that you have caused.
So what about the many millions which were spent on the congestion charging planning, which only had 16% of support in this city? Now you say you're for prudence in the way...
Thank you, we're coming up to the news. If we just leave it for a few minutes, then we can go and carry on again after the news. Right, how are you? Back with me, Brian Miner, on Salford City Radio 94.4. And this morning so far, we've been having a debate between Councillor Owen and Mr. Geoffery Berg about the possibility, or, well, we're actually having a referendum about whether you should vote yea or nay in January. And I'm going to ask both gentlemen to wind up now. We'll have another few minutes each, but there's just one final question I think I'll put to them before we do that. And that's came in, I haven't got a name on this. Isn't the idea of a mayor the only way that the Conservatives or Lib Dems could ever get any power in Salford? That's a nasty one, isn't it? Who's going to come in that? Councillor Owen.
Well, there's quite a salient point, but the reason we're all in politics, irrespective of what party you're in, you could be in the Independents, Greens, Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, you're there for your own social conscience, which party you want to belong to. And it's your choice to challenge that. As I've said before, it took me 11 years to get elected. But I think I've, in the years that I've been a councillor, I have provided a brilliant service to my constituents. I've always out on the streets, making sure that the casework's done. So if you can provide the good work that you were elected to do, there's no reason why you should be elected. But unfortunately, the sad fact is that we've got a lot of apathy in Salford. It proves that with the electoral turnouts. And surely, Labour do dominate wards. But I have to say, where we have got Liberal Democrat candidates, they work absolutely brilliantly. And I have no fear of tackling the Labour Party in elections. But it's the people of the city who make the decision. And we have got to prove that we are equally as good as everybody else when we put for council. But, as far as I'm concerned, if the city went to a total Labour majority, that is the people's choice. There's not much you can do about it. But that's why we're all in politics, because we have all our different political points of view. We may agree on some things and disagree on the others. But that is the route that you go down in life. And it depends where your social conscience lies. But no, I'm out in the political field year in, year out, and I'll continue to battle for the Liberal Democrats. And I'm sure everybody else in their own individual parties will.
I am concerned that local elections are dominated by a vote usually against the government, to protest against the government, whereas if you had a mayoral election, it would be like in London's going to be next year, more a one-to-one contest on the merits of the candidates. And it would give, if opposition parties, especially in these one-party councils, dominated councils like Salford, a chance. And I think that's no bad thing. Part of the problem in Salford is there's been no alternation of power, and things can ossify in that way. So people should have a fresh choice and consider the candidates on their merits, which they would be more likely to do with a directly elected mayor.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So can you both perhaps wrap everything up on what we've said today and how you feel about it, and how you should direct the electorate to vote in January? Who's going to go first? Mr. Berg.
Well, a directly elected mayor is a system that puts power with the people. It's a system that's used by many countries in the world to elect their leaders, the United States amongst them, where there's a direct election between two or more candidates over who will have power over in that case, the most powerful country in the world. It is also the opportunity to get things changed fundamentally. The council tax is not going to be changed by Labour remaining in power under the present system. It looks as if it's not going to be changed by the Liberal Democrats. The problem has been, as we've heard with Councillor Owen all along, he has spent the whole time defending in the council spending, defending the service providers and with it the bureaucracy, and not defending the people who are the majority who pay for all this, who are not ensuring that they get the lower council tax as far as possible, and what they do pay, they get maximum value for money. It should be the focus on the payers, the vast majority of the people who live in the borough, rather or more than on the people who just spend the money. And that's the wrong priorities which have developed in Salford and indeed to an extent in most other councils.
Right, Councillor Owen.
Well, my job as elected councillor is to defend and support the people of this city, and it's to provide the best service that we can with the fundings that we receive and generate. Now, once again, for the point of repeating myself, you've just read from your book and the diatribe that I've listened to both last night and this morning. You are not doing your cause any good by trying to promise a reduction in council tax when it's impossible. We have to pay for the services we've got. We've already had a £40 million reduction. You reduce the council tax anymore and take out these bureaucracy levels that you're talking about, which is obviously you're quite clueless of what there are in the structure of this city council. Now, what I suggest you say to the people this morning, you should apologise for the nuisance value that you have been in calling this referendum, along with the English Democrats and the Community Action Party, who last night, I believe, did not enhance your cause to the good. I'm sorry, Mr. Berg, but anybody listening to this programme will look out of their window, and if you've got the bins in the garden, they'll know that they get emptied on the rotors. We've had to reduce the structures within our directorates. I'll tell you for why. Urban Vision. We've had to take jobs out because of the cuts from government. We've had to take jobs out of environmental services in the sweeping cycles. And you want to come on this programme and tell the audience in this city that you've got a magic formula that will reduce the council tax by 50%, not only maintain the present services, but improve them also. If you've got that magic stardust, Mr. Berg, I suggest you spread it around the city, because you've not convinced me, and I'm sure the electorate of this city will not be convinced, because I think you've come out on a one-man, selfish attitude targeting both John Merry, the leader of the Labour Council, and also the Labour Party. And can I ask you this final question? Is the council tax in Berry 50% of what it was originally?
When we went into Berry, we didn't ask for a 50% reduction, and council and they don't get as much support from government, so that would not have been as feasible as in Salford. They don't spend as much as Salford, so that wouldn't have been feasible. But what we did get in Berry by forcing the referendum, and we were going to do it in Bolton as well, but we got the agreement from Bolton to hold a referendum on the congestion charge instead. It's a referendum on the congestion charge, so that numerous households in Berry and Bolton and in Salford, it would not have to pay over £1,000 a year each, an ever-escalating cost just to travel to work, and that was well worth the money in Berry. And I think the proposals to cut the council tax, to get value for money, it will be well worth the little bit of money spent in Salford.
A final quick word from Councillor.
Yeah, obviously, I tried to make the points quite clear to you. You don't understand the levels of deprivation in certain wards of this city. I think you've come in just a fly-by-night attitude of trying to get this referendum off the ground, which you've succeeded. You've cost the money, this council money. I'm of the same opinion, and I'm really, really pleased that I've faced you down on this issue, because the people from last night's meeting and listening to this radio today will understand Salford stands alone, a proud city. We are working to deliver massive changes and massive development in this city. We cannot do that without the finances we've got, and reducing them further would be a catastrophic mistake.
All right, thank you both gentlemen very much for coming in and putting your points over. And can I just say to all electors, the referendum will be held in January. Now, let's make sure that when this referendum held, whether it's yay or nay, it has the majority of the population. Don't sit at home and sit on your hands and watch television. Get out and vote. We want as many people to vote as possible. So at the end of the day, it's a definite decision. The people of Salford want this mayor or don't want this mayor. Thank you both for coming in, and we'll play you out with a little bit of the Beatles.